The story I told about me documenting Brasilia Teimosa as an important topic in Brazil in 2005. I said that I worked with a security guard for almost 2 years, and he learned how to use the flashlight, and he was really engaged in the project, in the whole process of making the series of photographs, and he was the first person I showed the work. When I made the prints and I made like special frames, and I studied with a designer and a curator how to put on the wall, and then we separated in different rooms, how to show it, and the first person that entered these rooms to see the photographic series of Brasilia Teimosa was Charles, the security guard, light assistant. And Charles saw the whole work in silence. It was a 2-year work, 2 years being with me, photographing everything. So he knew every person who was in the photograph. He knew every circumstance. He knew every pose and everything. And I was really curious and a little bit anxious to know what he would think about the result. And he saw everything maybe for half an hour in silence, and then he came to me, and I said, and then he said, the frames are really nice. I really like the frames. How did you make them? And the frames were actually colorful, made of acrylic, acryl, very nice, and maybe something that for him was then interesting. But the photographs were just too close to his reality. That was like the daily life he has there in the community. So for him that was like, okay, but the frames were much nicer, you know? So maybe this is a nice anecdote, and that was really important for me to be aware of what it is like responsibility, urgency, and what is like the ethics about being a documentarist. Sometimes we think something is really important to be said or to be shown, and then when we see like people just actually would prefer something else, you know, it is again about perspective. 3 years after, in 2008, my first exhibition in my life was in the ICA in London that were interested in showing Brasilia Teimosa, and for me it was a very happy but traumatic experience as well. Because I knew that the majority of people who would be interested in Brasilia Teimosa as an image, they were somehow accessing just the surface of the image because of the colors, because of the connection to Brazil. And I had that, for example, many people in France, in England, in other countries in Europe, wanting to use photographs of Brasilia Teimosa to illustrate like music album covers or festivals that would be talking about multicultural events. So my interpreted as this kind of parallel reality where everybody is happy in a tropical world, you know? And I didn't want my work and the work of those people and their image to be understood just as this happy thing. There was nothing really. It involves a smiling face. It's a smile that's a little bit of a revenge, because it's a smile of people who were oppressed for so many years. And now if they can have a car, if they can have a beer in the beach, just like as the rich people can, that smile is not like everything is fine. That has a lot of struggle behind that. And it was a pity that the context was a little bit lost when the work traveled. So today I think to myself that Brasilia Teimosa was a work I made in Brazil for Brazilians. It was not a work for another audience outside Brazil. And this is something really, really important to think of when we deal with pictures, with photographs, with filmmaking, especially in this crazy world that is the art world, where value is something completely subject to speculation. And most of the times it doesn't matter what you're talking about. What matters is if you are or not like valuable. It is centralized on the camera somehow, and the camera is super powerful because it like produces technically that image, but how that image is edited and how it is distributed in the sense of context, design, logos, and where it goes, like these things are super important. And I only knew that I had the power in Brasilia Teimosa. I went there with my camera. And I thought to myself, I'm sharing this power with the other because they also posed to me, okay, look, we make the picture. But then, after that, if a magazine in Spain buys that picture and puts it together with the logo of a flying company, you know, for travels and talk about like go to Brazil and have fun there, who has the power then? So power is something really complicated to think, and it's not only in the making, but especially in where it goes and how it's used. So we have to be aware of these problems. Making the picture is one of the instances of power, because where this image is going to go is another one, and it's maybe the most dangerous one. Because in the end, it's like, remember when we were talking about frevo, and the dancers who live in the peripheries of Brazil, they are normally black people, they know how to dance frevo, and they do that to sell the image of the state of Pernambuco in a postcard that goes in a flyer in the airport, for example. And that person is just there like to celebrate the culture of a country that tries to like exterminate their existence. So the perversion of this machine, like the state using the image of the oppressed, like to talk about, you know, a form of. So power is complicated in this sense, much more than who owns the camera, who is behind the camera, who is in front of the camera. But I think both in anthropology or in academy or in the field work and also in many areas of the art production, these limits are being tested. Who is filming who and how? So these are interesting problems. I don't think we solve them, but we put them in different perspectives all the time, no? And that's maybe the interesting thing about working as researchers and also with images. Like the problems are always there. We just change a little bit the way of approaching them, but they are there. And we have to talk about them.